Hi everybody, Jan Krasneric here with another live edition of Real Steel Sports. Just a little bit past 11:30 p.m. on this beautiful Friday night, Southwest Pennsylvania. Show is coming live from Elizabeth. Well, everybody, we've waited long enough. It's this Sunday, the 8th, the first Sunday of NFL football for the 2013 season. It's the first time in too long we haven't had a football, so we've had football on Sunday. I've missed it. It's like after the season ends, you kind of go through withdrawal phase for like a month. There's like no football. You're like, I don't know what the hell to do with myself. It hits everybody. People handle it in different ways. I just started making my predictions for the following season. I did that on my show last night. Actually, it was the night before. My mistake. In which I was correct in picking the Denver Broncos to beat the Baltimore Ravens. However, I didn't quite expect them to beat them in the fashion that they did. I mean, Peyton Manning throwing 7 touchdown passes. That is, let's put it this way. I guess you could say that in fantasy football, you either troll or be trolled. And I'm in a league, and one of my opponents could have played Peyton, but sat him this week, and he's paying for it now. So I'm happy because I didn't have to deal with it. Peyton throws 7 touchdowns. That was just holy shit. But that was impressive. Or he could be trolled. Or he could troll and play him and get the 50-something points that I think he put up. No, I think it was like 40-something. But whatever it was just an absurd total. Anyways, let's start with this week coming up, because we've got a very interesting slate of games this weekend. We got division matchups, got interconference rivalries. We even have a couple of games that on prime time that look very, very interesting. But let's start off and just go down the list of what I think is going to happen. I think this is going to be one of the more interesting seasons we have in a long time. I really do. Because you have so many different dynamics this season. Whether it's Adrian Peterson, how does he, continue follow up last season? How does Sean Payton do in his return to New Orleans after the year-long hiatus? There's just so many different subplots. And I'm looking very much so to see how every team does this year versus last year. All right, and we'll start off with I'm going down my list, courtesy of ESPN.com, where I do the yearly Pigskin Pick'em, where I pick every single game every weekend from weeks 1 to 17. You can either pick straight up or you can pick against the spread. And I'm going to read the games off down the list and see what I think is going to happen. First off, we got the Dirty Bird Atlanta Falcons, NFC runner-ups from last year, traveling to New Orleans to take on the division rival Saints. Sean Payton's back. He and Drew Brees are back together. The defense needs a lot of work, yeah. But getting guys, I got Kenny Vaccaro in the draft. I know you lose Chris Ivory to the Jets, but you still got, Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles. You got a hell of a good offensive line that I think will play better in Sean Payton's return. You get Robert Meacham back after his bum year at the Chargers. I mean, back in New Orleans, will be motivated again. That's really going to be something to see him shine again. Marcus Colson's been a beast. Jimmy Graham's the number 1 fantasy tight end. And you got Drew Brees, my man Drew. Matching wits with the Falcons and Matt Ryan and the newly acquired Steven Jackson. And his all-pro receivers, Julio Jones and Roddy White. I like New Orleans in this game. I think it will be a close one. The spread is 2.5. I say New Orleans wins by it. I seem to be a field goal. But Atlanta's a damn good team, and they're my pick to lose in the NFC Championship game again. But I think New Orleans gets them in New Orleans. I think that's just going to be. a matchup where I think Drew Brees will be able to exploit the Falcons' secondary. I mean, even more so possibly than Matt Ryan exploiting the Saints' secondary, because they upgraded this offseason. And they've got probably the best pass rushing safety in the NFL in Roman Harper. So I like New Orleans to win by 2.5. Up next, New England travels to Buffalo. That is going to be a really interesting game. That really is. I'm going with New England because, if ESPN, 96% of people are picking New England to beat Buffalo, and there's no surprise about why. I know Buffalo has new quarterback, E.J. Manuel. I know they've got, new guy Robert Woods, and they've got some weapons on offense, such as Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller, and they got a good defense with Mario Williams, Marcel Darius, and Jarius Byrd. But honestly, it's to the point now, you can plug any receiver with Tom Brady, and he's going to do well. I like the Patriots to win. The spread is 6.5. I don't think it's going to be that one-sided. I think New England will probably win by about 3 or 4 points. I think it'll be a pretty close game because I think Buffalo is a better team than people are giving them credit for. I have them penciled in for 8 wins, but they're not going to beat New England. Even with the tumultuous offseason they had, New England's going to win. All right, Cincinnati traveling to the Windy City to take on the Bears. I like Chicago in this game by a close margin, maybe 1 or 2 points. The spread is 3.5. I like Chicago. I think the Mark Trestman hiring for Jake Cutler was a great move. He and Brandon Marshall, second year together in Chicago after spending how many years in Denver together. They were split up for a while, but then they got reacclimated. I think that's going to be a beautiful combination to watch this year. I know Andy Dalton and AJ Green is on the same level, but I think the Bears win this game because I think going into the season, I think the Bears are going to show some new wrinkles on offense, and I think they'll do enough to slow down the Bengals. Besides, I'm not really crazy about the Bengals running game. So Bears in a close one. Dolphins traveling north to face the Browns. Come on. Yes, I know Cleveland's improved. Yes, I know they had a couple good draft picks. No, they're not going to be that much better than they were last year. There are people that are predicting the Browns to finish ahead of the Steelers in the AFC North. Yeah, that'll ever happen. Dolphins all the way. Tannehill and Mike Wallace tear that team up. Minnesota, Detroit's going to be interesting. A lot of people picking Detroit, but I'm going to go with Minnesota because it's put up or shut up for Christian Ponder, and I think he'll respond this season, early on, I think, because you give him Greg Jennings, you give him Cordero Patterson. You lose Percy Harvin, but still, he can be without. Besides, they went the playoffs last year without him, pretty much. He was out for, almost all that season. And Cordero Patterson's pretty much a similar guy, just not quite as versatile, but much faster. I think that Detroit's defense is still very suspect. I know Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson make beautiful music, but I love the acquisition by Detroit getting Reggie Bush this offseason. Because Stafford throws a lot of screen passes, and Bush is very good at taking screen passes and extending them into long plays. You just watch what he did in New Orleans for that 4 or 5 year stretch. He was awesome at that. I like Minnesota. The spread for that game is Lions by 3.5. Yeah, Minnesota wins. Pittsburgh hosting the Titans from Tennessee. I really wish, maybe I'm jinxing myself here. I hope not. I wish I could find something about this game that tells me the Titans will keep up. Because yes, I know they beat Pittsburgh last year in Tennessee, but come on, Thursday night game, so it was a short week for Pittsburgh. After they had, after they finally got back to 500. So then you factor in that after a rough win against the Eagles. If you forget a couple things, though, and that the Titans' offensive line was better last year. Even though they got Chance Warmack, the Titans' offensive line was still better because Warmack's not had that great a preseason. But Matt Hasselbeck is not there anymore. And Jake Locker, I don't care if Matt Hasselbeck's 40. Jake Locker's not as good as he was. The Steelers are just going to rattle him all day long. The spread is 6.5. Steelers beat them by 10 because, think about it. Just think about it. It's going to be... the reason why that I say the Steelers win so one-sided is because You just look at how this game matches up. Jake Locker's inexperienced against Dick LeBeau's 3-4 defense. Checkmark Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger against the pretty inconsistent Titans secondary. Checkmark Pittsburgh Steelers. Game, set, match. Steelers win big. Raiders at Colts. Indianapolis is potentially a playoff team under second-year quarterback Andrew Luck and coach Chuck Pagano. And Oakland's potential is to be one of the worst teams in the league. The Colts are favored by 6.5, but seriously, this could be a 25-point blowout. Colts win big because I have Andrew Luck as one of my quarterbacks this year. I think he's going to have an absolutely dynamite year. I don't know if the Colts make the playoffs. I think their inexperience at other positions might hold them back, particularly on defense and the running game. But I think they at least win this one. All right, the two teams with the top picks in the draft this year, KC traveling south to take on the Jags. Kansas City is a decent team. They really are. I mean, I know they went 2-14 last year, but if they get some more, if they would have gotten better play out of their quarterback position, which I think Alex Smith is much superior to Matt Castle, and a few less locker room distractions, such as Jonathan Baldwin, who I thought was just, I mean, even coming out of Pitt. I mean, I'm a Pitt fan, and I watched the guy play. He's a jackass. You know, he has no purpose in the NFL. I don't know why the Niners traded for him, but still, you get rid of a couple of those guys. You know, you get a good coach in Andy Reid. You get some guys healthy. You know, you have a decent defense. You have some offensive potential. You get the top pick in the draft, Eric Fisher, the tackle from Central Michigan. You've at least upped your win total by 4 or 5. And I think that'll be enough to beat Jacksonville because I know Blaine Gabbert's injured and Maurice Jones-Drew won't beat the Kansas City Chiefs by himself. He's going to have a mammoth performance. And the Chiefs' run defense is pretty good. They got guys like Justin Houston and Derek Johnson and Tom Bahali, Don Terry Poe. They got a very, very stout run defense, and I think that'll be on display on Sunday. The newly acquired Darrelle Revis heads back home to take on the Jets as Tampa Bay travels north to play New York. I believe the Jets will be the worst team in football this year. I mean, it really doesn't matter who starts. It doesn't matter if it's Matt Sims, Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, bring back Tim Tebow. It really doesn't matter because this team's headed for the crapper. I mean, just look at the roster for one. There is nobody on that roster that really shouts out all-pro. Like, the closest thing they'll get to a player like that is Nick Mangold, the center. And if your center is your best player, then you got problems. I mean, Antonio Cromartie's a good cornerback, but he's nothing. He's not that special, no. I mean, teams picked on him a lot when Revis was there and playing, and they weren't any good. My advice to the Jets is, if 6 weeks in you're shitting all over yourself, just cut Rex. Just cut ties with Rex because you want a head coach who has the same kind of beliefs and philosophies that Rex Ryan does, but you want a guy who's not going to put a target on your back every time you go out and play somebody. It really does help a lot when you kind of can kind of slide under the radar. Like look at the Steelers. They have a similar mantra to the Jets: ground and pound. Defense and run game. I mean. But the thing about it is they're not boisterous off the field and create locker room distractions, I like to think of it like this. If you're good, then you have somewhat of a license to talk and act like you're good. But if you suck, then you're just creating a big target. I know Josh Freeman has struggled the last couple of years, but still. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're gonna hammer them. I did predict that at some point in the season Freeman would lose his job to Mike Glennon, but I don't think it'll be after this game. Bucs win big. All right, now we have the Seattle Seahawks heading east to play the Carolina Panthers. Enough of that East Coast going to West Coast bullshit. Seahawks are gonna win this. I mean, the spread on this game is Seattle at 2.5. They were about 2.5, but. They're going to win by at least 10. I mean, Cam Newton's good, but he's not seen a defense like this. And the reason why I say that is because, you'd be hard-pressed to find a team in the NFL with 3 starting defensive backs that are 6'3" or taller. The shortest guy is 5'10" Earl Thomas, and he's still a beast at his position. I believe he's already an All-Pro, and he's so young. What makes the Seahawks so good is that they're good in every phase of the game. Their linebackers, they got Bobby Wagner. Their secondary, Richard Sherman, Brandon Browner, Earl Thomas. The defensive line, you bring in Cliff Averill. You have Chris Clemens coming off injury. You got Bruce Irvin. Offensive line, you got all-pro center Max Unger. You got a deep receiving core, Doug Baldwin, Sidney Rice, Golden Tate. Running back, you got Marshawn Lynch, quarterback Russell Wilson. This is the team that is going to take home the Lombardi Trophy. You watch and see. Seattle takes week 1. Green Bay at San Francisco in a rematch of the NFC Divisional Playoffs from last year. These are 2 teams that I think are going to underachieve in the win column. Like, people probably predicting Green Bay to go 13 or 14 wins. 11 is probably tops. But I don't think San Fran's going to be a shoo-in for 13 or 14 like people think they are. They're not going to the Super Bowl. Because, let's not forget, the end of the season last year, and Colin Kaepernick took over that team, Michael Crabtree is his favorite receiver. Now, I know you've got Anquan Bolden, you're bringing in Anquan Bolden from Baltimore for a 6th-round pick, which is like a bag of mulch practically. You have Vernon Davis, you've got Frank Gore, you have some offensive talent and a good offensive line around Kaepernick. Who were his other receivers besides Anquan Bolden now, with Michael Crabtree out? Mario Manningham's not going to be back for a while. Jonathan Baldwin's a bust, as I mentioned earlier. They just traded for. You're going to be surprised. I mean, Colin Kaepernick's not going to be as good. He's going to have a good year. Definitely an Offensive Player of the Year candidate because he's a dual-threat quarterback. But he's going to have trouble early, at least finding receivers, because Michael Crabtree is his guy. And that would have been a lot like in Ben's rookie year, in Ben's 2nd or 3rd year, taking away Hines Ward for a whole season. That's tough. But on the other side, Green Bay's even worse off. I mean, Derek Sherrod and Brian Bulaga, their 2 starting tackles, they're gone for the year. I mean, their running back Eddie Lacy's banged up. So the offensive, they lose Greg Jennings to Minnesota and Donald Driver to retirement. Aaron Rodgers pretty much is losing the foundation of the team that won him a Super Bowl, that he helped win a Super Bowl for. It's going to be really, really tough, for him, to play as well without those key guys. I think he can do it. I mean, he's still got guys like Randall Cobb and Jermichael Finley. But the defense is suspect. The line is bad. He has no running game and losing receivers. He's in for a rough year. But in this game, which is probably the highlight game of this weekend, at least for the second half of the weekend, I like the Niners to take this game. The spread is the Niners are favored by 4.5, and I think that's about fair. 4.5, 5-6 point win, I'd say. We got the Cardinals traveling to St. Louis to play the division rival Rams. Is the next game. I think St. Louis had one of the best drafts because I know everybody's raving about Tavon Austin and Alec Ogletree, but Stedman Bailey's a good player that they got from West Virginia in the later rounds because he and Tavon Austin were like Batman and Robin when they were receivers at WVU. I mean, you look at the seasons that they had. Particularly, look what Stedman Bailey did his final year. His last 2 years in college football, he had 186 receptions, almost 3,000 yards, and 37 touchdowns. Now, I know Tavon Austin's probably a better overall player and a better receiver, but you bring in 2 receivers that were damn good from the same team. That's vicious. That's almost like bringing in a quarterback receiver tangent from the same team. Arizona improved too, getting Carson Palmer, getting Rashard Mendenhall, even though it says it's an improvement, though I don't think it really is. They hired Bruce Arians, who was Coach of the Year last year, in the place of the ill Chuck Pagano. What else did they do? They drafted Tyrann Mathieu, the defensive back from LSU, who was suspended for a year. I mean, no pun intended, but I'm really high on this kid because he's been nothing but a playmaker all preseason. He was nothing but a playmaker at LSU, and although he can take time away from football, that ability to make plays doesn't change. But I think St. Louis takes this game. It's in St. Louis. division rivalry, good start to the NFL schedule. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be by 5.5 points. I'd say it's a close one. Now to the Sunday night game. Dallas hosting New York Giants. I was kind of going back and forth in my decision of who I wanted to win, who I thought would win the NFC East this year. I mean, was it Dallas or Washington? I thought Dallas for a little while, but then I thought, if RG3 plays remotely well, they'll win the division by 3 games. A lot of people are not really, sold on the Cowboys, but I think this is the year they could at least make a potential push for a playoff berth. Like, the last 2 years, they've been either 8-8 or 6-10. Not doing very well, and kind of fading as the season went on. But you switch to a 4-3 scheme. That puts DeMarcus Ware with his hand in the dirt, and he's a better pass rusher that way than standing up as an outside linebacker, which is pretty scary. You've got Brandon Carr, who's a damn good corner. He's been there for a year. You get Sean Lee back from an injury. You give DeMarco Murray an offense. Des Bryant can actually start a year and play as well as he was last year with Miles Austin and Jason Witten. It's a pretty damn good team. The Giants, they got Eli Manning, Hakeem Nicks, Victor Cruz, very good passing game. Losing running back Andre Brown with a broken leg hurts. Losing safety Kenny Phillips with a knee injury hurts even more. I think the Giants will definitely finish at least 500 or above, but I think Dallas wins the season opener. Big rivalry in Dallas. I do not believe that since the Cowboys opened their stadium that they've beaten the Giants in their own stadium. No, they have not beaten the Giants in their own stadium. So I think that'll change this upcoming weekend. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Time for Monday night games. Washington hosting the Eagles. I'll start with Washington because I want to kind of finish with Philadelphia talking. But first off, I'm picking Washington to win because RG3 is going to be better in his comeback than people think. And I think it's because the Redskins are finally going to wake up and realize if we run this kid anymore, we're going to kill him. We need to get him on design runs that are not going to get him killed. And then I think they're going to utilize his ability to throw better. Because Pierre Garçon missed a great deal of last season with a foot injury. Fred Davis was injured early in the season with I believe it was a knee injury. You have Alfred Morris, who's a 1,600-yard rusher and one of the best offensive lines in the game. And a defense, guys like Barry Cofield, you get Brian Arakpo back, you have Ryan Kerrigan, you get D'Angelo Hall. This is going to be a very good team. Possibly a 10 or 11 win team. Like they were last year. But Philadelphia, the only way I can describe it is just they're in deep shit. And there's a reason why. Michael Vick's a good player, and LaShawn McCoy is a good player, and Deshaun Jackson's a good player. But other than that, in terms of guys that aren't injured, there really isn't that much to praise on that roster. Lane Johnson, I don't know what he's going to do as a tackle his first year. I don't know how he's going to be, how good he's going to do. I mean, you should just look at the rest of that roster. The defense, other than Trent Cole, really doesn't have anybody good on it. D'Amico Ryans is a name player. That's about it. I think the logic behind the Philadelphia Eagles is puzzling because here you go through the season. You have one of the worst run defenses and pass defenses in the game. You cut your starting cornerbacks and pretty much you axe half your defense and your head coach. And what do? You have two guys that are defensive gurus that you could bring in. You could bring Lovie Smith to be your coach. You could bring in, a couple other guys that were out there you could have brought in to be your head coach. You go out and hire a college coach with no NFL credibility in Chip Kelly. I don't buy that at all. I really don't. Because you're improving the side of the football that doesn't need that much work. I mean, the offensive woes last year were injuries, non-consistency injuries. To be very blunt about this team, if the O-line wouldn't have been... Let's put it this way. To describe the offensive line last year, in the Monty Python's Holy Grail movie, there's a scene where the guy fights the Black Knight and he cuts off his arms and his legs. That's kind of what the offensive line for the Eagles was like last year. literally was almost like their whole offensive line was on the IR because they could not protect anyone. Like when they went to play the New Orleans in the Superdome, the Saints had an absolutely miserable pass rush last year, and they ate up the Eagles' offensive line. Washington's going to do the same thing on Monday night. Washington wins. Now the other game, Houston at San Diego. The Chargers, just 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was 2007, were in the AFC Championship game. And then the next year, they were in the divisional playoffs. And since then, they've not won a playoff game. In fact, they've been out of the playoffs for the last 3 years because I just don't understand, how a team that had this much talent and was this good, could be so bad. For lack of better terms, how could a team that was that good become that bad? They were a very, very good team a few years ago. They had playmakers everywhere, but a lot of those guys left, and Phillip Rivers was left other than Antonio Gates with practically nothing. He doesn't have a good offensive line. He's not very mobile. I mean, he's making poor decisions on the football field. And the team itself is going down the tube. I don't expect much out of San Diego this year, and if anything, they'll be competing for a top 10 draft pick. I like Houston in this game big. Houston's a damn good team. Last year, if they wouldn't have lost Brian Cushing midway through the year, I think they could have very, very much ended up with the number 1 seed in the playoffs because you look at what they were doing up to that point and what the defense turned into after. They were arguably the best defense in the NFL for the first 6 weeks, and then I think that's when they lost them. I think it was in week 6 or 7 or whatever. From that point on in the season, they were one of the worst defenses in the league. You have all the pieces now. J.J. Watt's healthy. I mean, Brian Cushing, Connor Barwin, all those guys are... And then you get Ed Reed to go with all those other guys in that defense. I mean, as a unit, they're fast, they rush the passer, they fly to the football. Houston's going to win that game going away. All right, so to predict, we'll talk about who I'm picking for week 1. I like the Saints to win and cover the spread. I like the Patriots to win but not cover the spread. I like the Bears to win, not cover the spread. I like the Dolphins to win and cover the spread. I don't get why it's a half a point. I like the Vikings to win. I like the Steelers to win and cover the spread easy. The Colts to do the same, and the Chiefs to win. I like the Buccaneers, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Rams, the Cowboys, the Redskins, and the Texans. If I had to pick one team this week that I think has a potential of really blowing out their opponent, it's Indianapolis. I think that the fact that Oakland's one of the worst teams in the league this year, that's going to be a bad situation. And if I had to pick one team that is on upset alert, I would probably have to go... I know it's not a huge favorite, but I'd probably have to go with the Dallas Cowboys because the fact the Giants have never lost in the new Cowboy Stadium. All right, that's all from me. Hope everybody has a good night. Enjoy the games on Sunday and Monday, and I'll be back after that.